thanks so much for coming back for our episode 2 of Frequency Check with myself, Tasha Jackson, as your host, and my co-host, Denise Mahaffey. Today, we're joined by Ashley Holland Esquire, who is a spiritualist and eco artist. She had previously done interviews with us, and so we're so happy to welcome her back. We're just going to ask some very basic, simple questions of Ashley. And so the first question is going to be, hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you explain to us what you're doing now since your last interview that we have done?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's wonderful to be back with y'all, and I'm so grateful and honored to be a part of your platform. So first, thanks for all that, and always a joy to see your faces and hear your voices. And wow, so much has happened. I believe that it's the worlds have shifted since the last time that we had an opportunity to speak in the virtual land beyond email. And for one, I have had a long-standing legal career, as you know, and then shifted back into the creative space of being an artist while also juggling law. And now I am also a full-time educator. So that has been one of the biggest, newest adventures, is teaching college students and guiding them both through, I teach entertainment, business, and law. I teach eco art, and I had the opportunity to teach a global perspectives critical media theory class. So being able to work with 18 to 22-year-olds has been challenging and inspiring, and requiring a whole new development of skill sets. So that's one of the big shifts. I also have gone from living in Portland, Oregon to Asheville, North Carolina, and now I'm in Chapel Hill. So a cross-country move as
Wow.
well, and have had some great opportunities with my art in the last year or so, and also randomly been able to be at the helm of driving some of the world's largest tech companies into the areas of privacy and AI to attempt to ethically craft policies that will essentially determine what things look like in the next 5 to 10 years in the virtual landscape. So lots has been going on.
Yeah, actually, I did not know that you were. I mean, I know that you're an educator, but I didn't know that you were teaching in the university space. So when you said that, when you're like, I've shifted into being an educator, my heart's like, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Yep. I am a visiting professor at Elon University in North Carolina right now. So, which is, it's funny. I had not planned for that to happen, but as the universe does, sometimes there's a greater plan. So I'm actually back in an area where my family is from, and working closely with a lot of people that are trying to give a lot of love to this area that deeply needs it. So it's sort of a passion project on a number of different levels, that I would not have foreseen the last time that we spoke. If you had told me this would be what it looks like, I wouldn't have believed it. But of course, here we are. So
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Well, that kind of segues into one of our questions. How did you know that the universe was shifting your life around and you were on the hero's journey?
it's sort of funny because it started with my art, as things often do. I think that art has a power to reveal subconscious happenings. And I started making art about this area while I was still in Oregon, and ended up that it got a lot of attention. And I think that was the budding of knowing that something was going to happen. And then I had some life changes in terms of my partnership that I was in, and just felt really driven to come back to North Carolina, where I had gone to college, but I haven't been back since I was the age of the students that I now teach. So it's been very surreal. And I went to college right down the road from here. So, but I think it began as sort of little, like, kindling, almost like heart kindling. You just kind of feel that the change is in order.
Yeah.
And for me, things tend to come in signs. And a lot of times they're aligned with nature. So I had a number of really interesting animal and astrological events occur. I saw the first possum I've ever seen in Oregon in my backyard. I saw three very distinct shooting stars, one of which was in the early evening. So it was a sunset shooting star. I have a lot of animal visits. When I was in Asheville, I had bears coming up to my doors, and even this morning, the hawk that was here yesterday as well swooped very low above me, which to me signals big shifts ahead. So I guess I'm about to hold on and see what happens next. But I look deeply to nature for signs. I spend a lot of time in creative flow and in prayer. Kind of recovering from a more traditional religious background and having to find my own way in my own community with people that are also open to more than traditional organized religion has to offer. Um, and I am really lucky to be surrounded by a number of people who are intuitive like I am, but even with greater talents, who sometimes can see things I can't to verify. So I've worked with a good friend named Don Simmons, who has foreseen all sorts of dramatic shifts in my life. And it's not surprising when I was considering moving to Portland. I was standing in a high rise in downtown Portland, and it was a gray day like it usually is in Portland and a little bit rainy. And I said, okay, universe, and my one of my symbols had been rainbows. And I was like, okay, universe, if I'm supposed to be here, please show a sign. 7 rainbows appeared across the window all of a sudden, which is one of the more dramatic, spiritual signs that I've had the opportunity to receive. So it's a mixture of hard work in the, normative space, and then waiting for guidance from beyond what I can tell on my own. So
Yeah. And, in 2020 was a major shifting point for all of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not just the 3 of us sitting here, but just the planet as we know. We're in ascension process. And so for me, shifting from the classroom into becoming an entrepreneur and doing business, and then being in the industry that I was in previously, and just kind of figuring it out and just trusting the process, knowing that there's something else for me. Because in one of the other videos that we done, I had spoken about the signs that I was having, that I was getting ready to undergo a huge major shift. And I started having all these dreams about
Yeah.
me not being able to walk into my classroom. So I would have the dream that I would get to school, I would go to put my key in the door, and then the key would get stuck and I couldn't open the door. Or I would open the door and it would be a black abyss, or it would be a brick wall. Or one time, the dream, I went to put my key in the door and the door just flew away, like in this
Wow.
tunnel. And then I started to feel a wall go up, an energetic wall. Every time I would go to work, it was just, I don't want to be here. I can't be
Yeah.
here. I can't walk
I've
in.
I've felt that as well. I've had that same kind of thing. I was practicing full-time law and ignoring my creative needs
Mhm.
for about a decade. And I was doing a lot of criminal defense litigation, so very difficult work and very emotionally taxing. I worked in complex criminal defense, so the people charged with the worst of the worst crimes.
Mhm.
I'm very thankful I was able to support people during that time. But it was like all of a sudden a wall energetically came up, and I knew I
Yeah.
needed to do something else. And similarly, once I was working at that basically the highest level of entertainment law, and felt the same thing. And I was being told to go back to art school, which everybody thought I was batty. Of course, the irony is I was able to double my income as a lawyer after going to law school, which no one foresaw. But
Yeah.
but just being able to listen to those signs. And I will also say, even though I'm telling about beautiful stories of rainbows and hawks, a lot of times when you realize you need to shift gears, it comes with adversity
Yeah.
also. And
Yes.
it's, if you're not listening, that adversity can be amplified. And
Yeah.
so I had to untangle a lot of personal challenges in the last couple of years as well, and really look at my role in them, and how I was enabling problematic and painful circumstances. And I think that it's useful to be able to value the pain as well as all of the joy that you can derive from this journey. It's a balance. And so there's sort of a beauty sometimes in the struggle as well, and as well as a lot of information that can lead you to the next step.
Well, and it's going back to that analogy of, diamonds are created under pressure. And
Yeah.
I would say that I have, and Denise as well, and it sounds very similar. So the three of us, and again, I had not met you prior to today, but it sounds as if we're undergoing a really similar process, which one lends to the further evidence that this is real, this is happening. Other people are going to be either they are undergoing the same process or will be undergoing the same process. And so it's that, I have overcome an extreme number of challenges, but the growth that I've had through those challenges and the struggle and the frustration of overcoming those challenges. But now I look back and say, oh, look at all the things I've overcome. Look at all the new skills. Look at all the new tools in my toolbox. Look at how much more immensely creative I am. Finding that balance between my inner feminine and inner masculine, whereas I'm sure you can relate to this. It was mostly masculine driven energy where there was very little creativity. And then again, like you were saying, you felt like your creativity was squashed. Me as an educator, it people would say, well, what is the justification behind what it is that you do? And I can't say, oh, I'm channeling all this information or I'm receiving all these downloads that of the information that I'm giving my students in the classroom. You can't say that, and so it started stealing away more and more of my creativity, because then I had to kind of BS my way through a justification of the reason why I was doing things. And it was only creating a situation for me of increasing inauthenticity, because
Yeah.
that's not who I was. Whereas now I'm living a much more authentic life of, I am a psychic, I am a medium, I am a channel, I do these things. And these things are now front and center a part of my life. And I don't have to hide those things anymore. And I can be who
Yeah.
I am.
It's funny you say that, because as an attorney, for a number of reasons, including attorney rules, I felt very constricted as well. And that's how I shifted into the art space, because I realized the power of media can be so much stronger than the power of law. Yeah, we should hit things from all angles, but you can reach so many more people and in a much more somatic way through the arts. And it's kind of funny, because I was concerned about the constriction entering into academia. And so when I interviewed for the university job I have, I made sure to show my creative content that's activism content. And right out the gate, I said, I'm an activist, I'm a witch, I'm out there, I support psychedelic legalization and plant medicine. And I said that in my interview, so it would never, they knew what they were getting. And I made it clear I wasn't going to stop any of that. And I've been very lucky that at least the two department chairs I work with have fully embraced that. They might roll their eyes at me every once in a while because they're not entirely where I am yet. But it's given me a lot of freedom to speak freely. And because I'm not in the K through 12 environment, which is so much stricter in terms of what you can do. Being a also, I mean, with all the law changes that have affected what you can and can't say in school, I'm very lucky that I work at a private liberal institution where we are not subject to some of the laws that North Carolina has passed. So there is at least currently greater freedom in terms of what I'm able to say with full transparency. So it's been interesting. I don't know how long I'll be able to do that in light of some of the changes that are happening around the education space. But for now, I do tell my students that, even my eco art students, I've told them personal stories about how a close friend of mine said that, to overcome some of what I've been dealing with, I need to do rituals with the land that I'm on, to heal some personal things, some ancestral things. Because my family has been in this area a long time, that means they've done some great things, but also there are some problematic histories, as many families have. And so I consider that that spiritual weight very, very deeply with the moves that I make in my personal life. But I'm very open with my kids about it. And, my last art project actually that I presented, it was called a spell, and it was very blatantly a spell. And, that I showed that to them, and they're like, how is your spell going? And I know they think I'm a little out there, but I also have really been able to connect with some of them that I think are also seeing the different worlds that exist that we don't always acknowledge or talk about.
Yeah.
Because, kids are intuitive too.
Yeah.
Before their dreams are crushed and creative spirit is hampered. That's why little kids say what's on their mind, and they're fearless. And, I think if we can sort of cherish that energy that some of the students have, the world would be a better place. So
I am so appreciative of the wonderful work that you're doing and for being that guiding light for the next generation. You are an incredible individual, and I'm so grateful that you are on this planet and on
oh,
this journey with us.
well, back to y'all as well. I think that we all are out there. You just have to be around to find the people doing the good work.
Totally. You know what? When bless his heart, when he was in body, my life partner, he was aligned with the university in San Diego, SDSU, and with the Native American Studies program, the AIR program. What they ended up doing was taking the graduate students and deinstitutionalizing them after they had been institutionalized through their college career.
Mm.
And it was important on a cultural level, to be able to return to their home and to feel connected to their community. And that's the way I'm picturing what you're doing, is you're broadening the mindset of your students so that they can live and express through their hearts, which is fantastic. I mean, that living heart forward is the best way to live. However, it's literally a roller coaster ride of bridging this divide between the 3D experience and the 5D plus experience, is what we're calling it, because we've experienced energies that are so far out there that
Yeah.
it's off the grid. Like literally in quantum physics, it is like Albert Einstein's off the grid. You
Yeah.
have the 4 quadrants. It's so out there. Which is how the novels that I channeled ended up coming into reality. So how do you help your students navigate when they're going through this ascension process and this awakening process, and learning that they have a skill set that is beyond what they originally perceived? Like when you said they're born awake, and they're born aware, yet through the educational process, their dreams become hampered along the way. How do you reach them and help them open up?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of tools in the toolbox, and the biggest one is listening and empathy, and just holding space for their explorations and experience without judgment and without trying to control what they might believe or think. But that said, a lot of the kids that I teach have grown up in a bit of a bubble. And so I also feel like it's a big part of my opportunity with them to expose them to things that they hadn't previously been exposed to. So that might be a variety of people that I bring in. One of the classes I taught, every Friday, I brought in a different speaker so they could learn from people other than me who have a wide range of experiences. Now, it just so happened that many of those people were also spiritualists, because I was calling in friends that have very fancy careers, but that also are very caring humans that do believe that there's more. So that has been one way, but making things fun and not scary, not
Yeah.
using a kind of a landscape of penalties, but instead framing things as a safe place, and I think it really makes a difference, especially for this generation that grew up in COVID and that has fear around potential violence, around shootings and things like that. I mean, they grew up in a
Yeah.
different space from what it was like for me, not as to say things were perfect in the 80s and 90s, but it was different. And so just being able to support that experience and the unknowing. Also, I think embracing the they're taught that they have to know all the answers, and as they're graduating, I have a bunch of seniors right now, and just sitting with them and having a coffee and saying it's okay that you don't have all the answers and how boring things would be if you did. And maybe this time is meant for you to be able to just calmly reflect. I mean, for me, my big epiphanies don't happen when I'm overloaded multitasking. They happen when I'm in the shower
Yep.
or when I'm running or when I'm
Shower.
driving. Of course, not good times to take the notes that are starting. That's when I get all the downloads and I'm like, I have to remember this. But it's when you're in that more relaxed and receptive state, which you can't tap into so much when you're anxious and,
Yeah.
living in the strictures of our cultural and institutional confines. So I think, even if we physically can't be in a different astrological space, mentally we can, and through our art we can, and through our exposures to other. And, I think the other thing is kind of going back almost to the hardship things we were talking about. What I really value about some of the really difficult experiences I've been through is it's helped me develop a deep sense of empathy for others because I understand, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't otherwise. I wouldn't be able to help support people, whether it's as a lawyer or an educator, an artist or an activist. I wouldn't be able to share those struggles in the same way if I hadn't shared the struggles. And also, it's allowed me, because of the different areas I work in, see how everything and everyone truly are connected. There aren't any issues socially we're dealing with that aren't deeply connected to other social issues.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
likewise, all of the people around the world, and really, I believe even further than that, all of the beings. I don't just end with humans. So for me, it's all the things that are living, breathing. We are all deeply connected. And I think when you realize that, and if it changes how you walk through the world. I mean, it really does, because if you think of everyone as part of you and you as part of them, it's not us versus them, it's us together. How will we navigate whatever challenges we're facing? So I think just that perspective shift has been a huge a huge driving force in my approach.
So I'll say this to you. You won't fully grasp the profound influence that you have had on your students until years from now when they start coming back around.
I believe that. And I mean, I'm the student that has done that with my
Yeah.
really meaningful guides,
Yeah.
whether they're in an academic space or otherwise. I mean, there are people who I had the opportunity to learn from that deeply shaped why I became an attorney. I worked for an
Yeah.
attorney in college who did wonderful things, and that is why I wanted to be an attorney. And the attorneys I learned from in law school, I learned to pattern things I did after them. I didn't take classes that taught me how to do what I do. I watched people and learned from people and then just started doing it. So, and being able to share forward that sort of mentorship, I think, is a big part of it too. The notion that we do everything alone is such a fallacy, because none of us would be alive without the intervention of all the spirits and lots of human hands as well. So, I think, and gratitude. I think daily gratitude and ritual practices
Oh, yeah.
keep that in mind. I was a colleague of mine works in grief art rituals, and that's her space, and she has beautiful work. But one of the thing, a story that she told recently was about a friend who had lost their child unexpectedly, and the friend said that it was really having had this deep ritual practice and like yoga movement practices that kept her going, because she was able to fall back on these routines that could take her out of the worldly space and helped her find a grounding even against the most difficult circumstances. And I really believe there's truth to that. And when I start feeling like I'm a little bit lost, I have to take a look and say, well, what's missing in my life? What am I not making time for? And it's often that spiritual practice that I've sort of lost connection with and need to get back to. And it's funny because sometimes it's in the, not that it should be this way, but a lot of times in the harder times is when we do remember
Yeah.
our spiritual practices. You know, we need to do a better job of remembering them in the times of joy and excitement as well. But it's sometimes it takes the hard stuff to get you back on the spiritual track. And, you know, I'm grateful for those reminders when I need them, even if they're really tough in the moment.
Hey, we're taking a short break to say thank you so much for watching Frequency Check. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on all of our other social media platforms. And most importantly, don't forget to buy us a coffee and check out our coffee shop. Yeah,
You know
and
what? You said it. I mean, there's grief and then there's good grief. Wrote a book about it. But when you can turn around and laugh about the situations, and laughter is the best medicine. When you can heal yourself through laughter, that just means that, like you said, Ashley, you've received enough contrast on a specific experience where you can see everything with complete objectivity. And when you're able to do that, there really isn't that sense or that feeling of I'm done with this existence and the only option is to take my life. We've known people to do that, especially through the intensity of the spiritual awakening process. So thank you so much for offering, you know, your tips from awakening to Zen, and how to value life with gratitude and laughter and love.
Yeah. I think too, the biggest thing to remember, because we've all had those moments where it's been hard to see the next steps forward.
yeah,
And, you know, I think for me that
I will raise my hand to that.
yeah, if I could just go and tap my former self on the shoulder and just say, hey, this is just temporary. Like there's so much more coming. And I think if we can just remember that whatever, no matter how difficult the circumstances, and even with prolonged difficult circumstances, in reality, it all is just temporary. And I think that kind of understanding can help pull you through, even if you can't quite see that white aura light. It is there. You just have to sort of find the tools to exist in the moment. And yeah, I pray that people are able to tap into that, you know, existential long-term being that we all are in our unknown soul space, you know.
Well, and I was going to add something to what you had said earlier. I was reading or watching, I can't remember anyway, absorbing information from somewhere about the reason why light workers are so relatable. And it's because we have experienced such a huge frequency shift in our life. We have experienced many vibrational frequencies within ourselves, outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's that journey towards Christ consciousness. And if you look back, going harken back to the days of religion, right? If you strip it down and you look at prophets as people, and people that were light workers that were doing the same things that we're doing, it wasn't mystical, it wasn't magical, it was just that they were an open channel.
Yeah.
And if you look at those people, the extreme hardship that they had endured.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that my situation is way less than any of their situations, but doing a comparison, right? And just looking at hardship in general, what has been the hardships that you have had in life, the people in your life that have been toxic, how have you moved through that situation? And then how do you discuss it and talk about it with other people that then later are going through that same thing? And so that's one of the things that I have learned is that, Denise has, and we'll talk more about it later. I'm sure it's going to come up again about being a Bob. And so, Denise's former husband, Larry, had a story about Bob's. We won't tell the whole story here, but it's pretty hilarious. And so essentially it's the person who goes first. It's the trailblazer. It's the person who has to kind of figure it out for everybody else. Yeah. And so, just like other people have been that for us, then we turn around and pay it forward. And we are that for other people, where the circumstance that you just came out of and that you have triumphed over, here it is someone else that's in the same situation. And then, going back to astrology, if you look at all of these different cycles, of course, there are going to be people that either are ahead of you or are behind you, because that is the quantum mechanical nature of this 3D realm that we live in. And so if we start to focus on, especially as light workers, like, okay, I know that I am going to overcome this situation, but then the joy and the pleasure that I get from overcoming that situation, I then can turn around and I can grab the hand of the person that's behind me and I can pull that person up too. Right. And then
Yeah.
that's how we all ascend together.
I have a friend of mine who's a worker in the spiritual space as well, who I look to for suggestions and critiques. He uses the analogy of a lighthouse.
Mm.
And I really like that because it's like we've been through the storm
Yeah.
and can still reflect our light. And one of the lessons that I've had to learn of being a lighthouse is we can help people, but we also have to have some level of non-attachment, which has been so difficult as an attorney when I can see the answer, but others are not doing the thing to get to the place they need to be to protect themselves or to flourish. And whether that's in a personal space or a professional space, about 10 years ago, I had the strongest vision of the word Cassandra. And at the time, and this was right when I was really acknowledging some of my intuitive powers and sort of my alternative ways of being that had been, kind of bottled up and in this package of someone that fit into the society I was in. And when I started letting it out, that word came to me, and I realized it was a reference to, I think it was Greek goddess. I don't want to misspeak, but a historical goddess who was intuitive, but her intuition powers came with the downside of people never believed her.
Yeah.
And so she was speaking these truths and trying to save the people, but the people weren't taking it. And that happens, I think, with a lot of us who are intuitive.
Oh, yeah.
And so just being able to do the good work and hope for best outcomes and be a wonderful support to people, but also know that energetic boundary of protecting yourself, not absorbing too much of their energy, because everyone has to walk their own path. And sometimes people have to figure it out for themselves, even if you
Yeah.
can see, oh no, don't go that way. It's going to be difficult. Sometimes people need that for their own spiritual growth. So that's been one of my challenges to myself is be able to appreciate where people are and meet them there rather than
Yeah.
trying to direct them beyond the scope of what I should be doing.
Yeah, the biggest lesson of an empath, right, is having those energetic boundaries, because we want to
Yes.
jump in and save everybody and help. And I'm the
Yeah.
superhero and I can do it all, right? And I
Yeah.
struggle with that with my own children. And this morning, my daughter found herself in a situation, and the school nurse called me, and I got on the phone with her and I said, well, and it wasn't a I told you so
Yeah.
moment, but it was a, okay, what solutions are you going to come up with?
Yeah.
Because now you have found yourself in a situation, and I'm not going to come pick you up. I'm not going to modify my day. You're going to have to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so she was crying and she said, you're right. And she said, okay. And then, the nurse got back on the phone and said, we are going to handle this situation, like, she's got this. And I said, okay, have a great day. I'll pick you up at the end of the day. And that was kind of it. And so,
Yeah.
it's, as a mother, it's especially difficult because you want to save them, but I know that I can't, right? They
Yeah.
have to walk their path. They have to learn these things. And, when it's our siblings or if it's our parents, we have that propensity, but you have to, again, develop that strength within yourself to recognize when it's enough, when you when you have walked halfway. I used to say to my students, you take a step towards me, I'll take a step towards you. And as soon as you stop walking, I stop walking.
Yeah,
And it's
that's a good way to
that
think
same
about it.
concept. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's that
I've
same
definitely
concept.
struggled with that at being an educator in my first year. I think I have been overly trying to support to an almost ridiculous level at times. And I've had to tailor that because, I have to remember my students are not my age. They haven't been through everything that I've been
Yeah,
through. Sometimes they need a little bit more built-in accountability systems. And
yeah,
I was laughing, the only student that didn't pass my classes last year, who's a wonderful student and I adore and we have a good relationship, said, I hate to tell you this, but I really think you need to be stricter. You're just too lenient. And I'm like, of all kids to be lecturing me. But he's right. He's
yeah,
right, because it's when you get to the point where you're enabling students that could do better to
yeah,
not do that higher level, that's not really doing them a service. It might feel nicer in the moment, but sometimes the kinder choice is the more difficult path.
right.
And so being able to just sort of find where that balance is. As an attorney, I've gotten better at it. So I'm still learning and thankful that I'm still a student of life in so many ways, that there is so much more to learn. And being an artist, we do a lot of art critiques. And I like that practice, not as a negative or scary thing, but if you're always intentionally reflecting upon the things you've done and how you could improve, it really leaves a lot of space for growth, instead of just sort of being like, okay, I did the thing, it's perfect. There's always so much more to learn, and inviting other perspectives to help you reflect upon what you're doing can be so valuable, because there's things you don't even notice due to perception biases. And, we all come from different landscapes. So I think there's a lot of fun in that kind of revision, even if you can't make the changes, just to go back and say, what could I have done differently there that might have produced better outcomes for myself or for others?
You know what? Speaking of how to produce better outcomes for myself and others, I recently contacted Ashley, knowing that she has an extensive background in entertainment law. And I had a simple question because I ended up taking this form of eco art, which is natural light reflection. And oh my gosh, the reflections are incredible. We put one video out on Earth Day. And thank you, Ashley, for your support, because it would not have been possible without you.
Yeah,
I took time-lapse photography, and it's basically a silent movie. And
Yeah,
the story was so much richer if I could accompany it with music.
yeah,
Yet with copyright law, that's kind of dicey. And when you see all this material all over YouTube that is blatantly,
yeah.
not observing copyright law, I thought, no way am I going to step into that. So I reached out to Ashley with a simple question: what do I do? And her answer was, well, there's no easy way around it. You just have to reach out to the artist and to the publisher or the
Yeah.
producers and ask for the permission. So of course I'm reaching out to like 15 different like rock star bands, and I heard from one, and Ashley did not poo-poo my art form. Thank you.
No, every art form is valuable,
yeah,
and I would never do that, because everybody's creative expression has value, and I am all about supporting people's soul projects, absolutely, and helping navigate the nonsense legalities around it. It's lawyers often don't help things. They make it more complicated and expensive. So whenever I can counterbalance the industry that I'm in, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. And you know what? The blessing, it was kind of funny because the response that I received in order to get this thing out on Earth Day, it came in on April Fool's Day. And I thought, oh, this is not a joke, is it?
Ah, that's great. I love the humor that the universe has sometimes in timing.
Totally. And I tell you what, it's a modern day Fantasia, and thank you for your support, because without your guidance, I would have potentially given up and not
Oh,
put this out there to the world. I'd love to know more about your eco art and what you're producing and how we can support your art form.
Yeah, I was going
yeah.
to
Well,
ask, can we maybe get some samples and I can put them up here in these squares? Of-
yes, I don't know how to do that, but like now in real time, get them. Is that how we do
Oh, no,
that?
no, no. In
After
the
the fact.
post
Okay.
production. Yeah, I'll put them
Yes.
up in the post production, post
Yes. I
production.
was gonna say that might
Yeah.
be easier, but yeah, I actually I just showed a piece that's actually it is made from glycerine soap, an iPhone crushed to glitter, 41 wisteria petals, and 50 unhinged safety pins. And that is Protection Spell from Patriots, which is sort of a spiritual approach at creating a little white light around us that are trying to do good work in light of the abuses of some of the laws that were intended to protect us, but
Right.
that actually harm our privacy and are taking our data and abusing it and framing it in ways that often aren't accurate. So it looks at the doctrine of unclean hands, these legal doctrines of unclean hands, due process, fruit of the poisonous tree, and initiatives like the Patriot Act that basically allow for warrantless searches. So that one, I showed it virtually, and I'm looking for a physical 3D gallery location for it right now. And I took my students out. The eclipse was during one of my classes. And, a lot of the teachers just kind of kept on business as usual and didn't acknowledge it. And I'm like, this might be the only time any of us see something like this again.
20
This is
years.
something, right? This
Total,
is
the
not
next
something to be,
total solar eclipse in the United States will be 20 years from now.
yeah, exactly. And, who knows where we might be or if we'll be at all. And so I wasn't about, even though we had an entertainment business class that I was teaching, I tied in the eclipse. So we talked about all of the entertainment festivals happening around it and the little mini economies. And then we all took our eclipse classes. I got them and we went outside for that hour or whatever we were in the 80% totality. So it wasn't extreme, but it was still noticeable.
Yeah.
And I was taking pictures the whole time and I ended up with the most incredible shots that I did not expect from an iPhone at all. And those actually have been accepted into a gallery online called Eco Art Space that'll also have a printed version. So just in the last week, those are the two projects that are percolating. And then I will be in another show with the Alternative Art School in June. And so I am ideating what that project will be in the interim. So I've had a lot of opportunities for my creative work, which is a big part of why I shifted into education. The role that I'm in, that's actually a requirement of my role is to maintain my creative practice. And so they're not just permitting it, they are really supporting it. And
Ah,
that was very intentional so that I can really devote the time I need to. And my other work is better in other spaces when I'm able to have that, back in the like Renaissance period, they talked about how some of the painters of the most incredible art, historical like church art, they referred to them as being possessed when they were creating. And I don't
oh,
think of it as like a scary way, but when you have that ecstatic creative
yep.
flow happening, it does kind of feel like we talked about this earlier of, you're sort of the channel
Yeah.
and it's coming from somewhere else but
Yep.
that's also deeply connected into you. And sometimes you're just like, oh, these things are all coming. I've got to just get them out. And so where I am now in my life is creeping more towards a place of being in that spot more than less, versus it just being an afterthought. So that's the beginning of the journey that I'm on.
Yeah.
It's
And it's
always it.
Yeah, and it's intense. Denise and I have discussed this before because the very first book that I channeled, I wrote in 4 days,
Wow.
and it was 20 hours a day of channeling. And then the second book that uh, I wrote it in a week and a half. And it was again, I had to force myself to stop and go to sleep. I had to close the channel so I could rest. And I wasn't eating. All I was doing was at my computer creating, and that was it. I could not do anything else.
Yeah.
And the blessing in that was that it was during the summer when my kids didn't have school. So I didn't have
Yeah.
anywhere to go or anywhere to be or anything like that. But it was just the intensity of the compulsory energy that in essence, it forces you to create. You cannot think about anything else. You can't do anything else. You can't interact with people. You go into this really intense space of creation and it just starts pouring out of you and you can't stop until it's done.
That reminds me, as you're talking about that, I have a 400-page book that's written that I'm in the process of trying to get published. It's the first volume. I was trying to write the whole thing, and one of my intuitive friends was like, it's 3 volumes. You're done with the first one. And I was like, oh, that makes total sense. You're right. But it's funny because it has become a historical record of law and of hidden histories of places and of pop culture and of current events. But the way it comes to me is in a song. And so every word, I write it down because it comes as an intuitive thing. But then every word I footnote and it relates back to a hidden history, but it flows to me before I create the research behind it. I get the words first. And then I realize, oh, this relates to blah, blah. And then then I spend thousands of hours making the footnotes that really tell the histories. But that's how it comes to me too. It comes as a song. And now I have a 400-page song that that does all these things, but that's very much how it is for me too. And what's interesting is when I do give that side of myself or that side of spirit attention, it gets bigger. And when I ignore it, it goes away. And I've been not giving that poetry side of myself attention. And it's funny because I know all I have to do is start writing again, and that valve will come back open. And I think I've almost been intimidated to do it because I know it's going to be all consuming again. So I'm like, just wait till classes end and then go back to the poetry. But I very much feel that mine has taken much longer. I have not had the 1 week writing experience. It's been more like a 5-year writing experience. But that's also because I wasn't as focused on it as I want to be. So just having space for that.
Well, a lot of what you said is Denise, man, when you read her book, it's alliteration. I mean, pages and pages and pages of words that is the first sound. So there are several pages where it's just a P sound or an S sound every single word.
That's funny because mine has a lot of alliteration too. I really hadn't thought about the connections of that until you said that, but now I'm like, how many more intuitive people speak with alliterations? And it's something I've had to defend when I've been in formal art critiques. And I'm like, I'm not going to change it. That's what Spirit said. I'm open to feedback and reflection, but some stuff are non-starters and it's, I've kind of just embraced it. And I'm like, no, that's just the style it is. So
yeah. Well, and even further testament to how real it is. Right. And so that these things that we're experiencing are so real that Denise is experiencing it separate from you experiencing it, and you're experiencing the same thing. And so that's, for me, further proof, and hopefully for anyone else who is listening and watching, is further proof that all of this is very real. Because how do you explain 2 separate people channeling nearly the same information on different parts of the planet at different times? Because Denise, I kid you not, like I was witnessing Denise's process, and we were having a conversation and she said, hold on, I feel a download coming on. Okay. Months later, Denise reemerges and she's like, the book is done. And I was like, what are you talking about? Right. And so then I remember she's like, let's get together and let's talk. So I remember it was on Christmas Day, just here in 2023. It was Christmas Day and we were just catching up because it was nearly all of 2023 for the most part that Denise was downloading the Quantum Entanglement Volume 1. And so we're just hanging out, we had like a 6-hour Zoom jam session or over the phone. I can't remember what it was. and we're talking and having a good time and everything, and then I said something and boom, it triggered another download. But this time it was much shorter, which was volume 2. And
Yeah.
so it was it was a few weeks later, and then Denise is like, okay, volume 2 is done, and I'm just like,
When I think there's
know
something
how
really
quickly
important
it can
there.
happen, right?
I think that underscores not just the realness and the importance of having that intergalactic connection on your own, but that building community of others in this
Yeah.
space also can really make that flourish. And I have a similar example that I had brought a friend of mine who is a spiritualist as well, and she helps people learn to create domestic temple spaces so you don't feel like you have to go somewhere, but you can build with your smaller communities, little
Wow.
churches where you can have deep practices and love and faith together. And I took her to see one of my favorite bands that is not in the spiritual space, but just being there around everyone dancing and moving. And she didn't have her phone, and she's like, "Can I borrow your phone? I got to do some voice messages for my next sermons." And I'm like, "Yeah," because I totally get when that stuff hits you. It could be from dancing or singing or talking to another friend who has that same kind of light path, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yes, all the things. And so I think it's something that this is not a journey that we're walking alone, and we can see that in each other. And I think it's important to be able to support each other, even in those sometimes unspoken or directly spoken ways.
Oh my gosh, Ashley, thank you so much for being you. You
Oh,
are incredible. You are a gift to this world. And we definitely want to have you on future podcast episodes, and we have to be respectful of your time. I know you've got a ceremony, an educational ceremony to get to.
yes, I'm very excited to see my students' artwork. They've had it locked away so we couldn't see what they were building, and I've worked with these students all year, so I'm very excited. And I think especially for art students, it's so vulnerable to put yourself out there, and sometimes the teachers they're working with directly mean very well, but I've worked with a lot of mentors in the art space that meant well, but that said something that really, crushed something I was doing. And I've tried to take the opposite approach of just deep, deep support, kind of radical hope with their projects. So some of them are just really flourishing, and I'm so excited to see, what they've put together as our new visual immersive environment. So I don't even mind the hour commute to go see them. So
If you're able to share that along with your art form, please send us some images, and we'll be happy to share it with our
oh, thank
community
you.
as
Yeah, that would be
well.
great.
Sure.
That would be wonderful.
Thank
So let's
you.
promote some students for
Heck
sure.
yeah, that's what
Well,
life's all
thank you.
about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's been so wonderful to speak with y'all. It's an honor to be included on your podcast. And I just am excited about the work that you're doing and can't wait to listen to the episodes that you're putting out. And also please put links to your different books as well. So I would love to follow up, and I'm sure a lot of your other audience members would as well.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And how does everybody reach you after the podcast is ended?
Yeah, so my email is Ash, which is my nickname, ASHE, at ashleyadvocates.com. My website is ashleyadvocates.com, and my Instagram is ashleyadvocates.com. I have now represented enough tech companies that I am a little bit dodgy about the social media space because I've just seen too much, even though I am still on Instagram. So I am no longer, I lost thousands and thousands of followers on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on Twitter. And I'm okay with that because managing one is enough for me at this point. So that is, Instagram is the best way to find me on socials, but I do post my art and lots of other people's art and lots of music and sound and spiritual events. So I would love for anyone to connect with me in any of those formats.
Thank you so much, Ashley. We really, really appreciate you being our guest today. Thank you.
Thank you.